Hi, today's Wednesday. It's June 6th. My name is Adam Hebner. I'm the CEO of Modern Mortgage, and this is today's Modern Minute. And guys, those of you who follow us, we're very grateful to all of you who are part of our community. You know that we typically use the Modern Minute to update you on things that are happening in the mortgage world. I got to tell you, I like mortgages. In fact, I would go so far as to say I love mortgages. And I think mortgages love me. I love this industry. I love the people I work with. I love the clients and partners we get to serve. It's a big deal. Every meal I've fed my sweet family has come from somebody giving us the privilege of being able to serve them in a mortgage, and I'm grateful for that. But the times have now grown to a place where there's just more on my mind and more I want to talk to you about. And so if you'll indulge me, I'd like to use this Modern Minute for us to be in a dialogue about some bigger things and frankly some things that are exceptionally important for you to know and for all of us to know. And so I want to invite you to walk a process through with me. And I don't know exactly how to articulate everything that's on my mind and on my heart, but I'm going to try my best to do it. And I hope you'll come along with me, and I hope you'll respond and argue and agree and support us and troll us and do all the things that a good, active, smart, intelligent society should do together. So I want to invite you to do that with me. And as we do, I want you to consider a greater theme that I've introduced you to at times in the past, but that is becoming now so palpable that to not address it just seems crazy in my mind. So let's talk about it. One of the things that you're observing happening in all of the news that's around you right now, economic turmoil and stock market getting back to all-time highs, and huge, beautiful, important, historic cities are on fire as a result of the George Floyd protests, and other such things, all of these things happening around you, are the result of one really, really important big thing that's happening, and that is that we are coming to the end of a significant economic cycle. Now, when I talk about economics in this context, what I'm talking about is the behavior of people. I'm not just talking about money and capital flows and money supply and things like that. Those things are important and they matter, but what we're really talking about is how people behave. Now, when we get to the end of a significant economic cycle, a long-term cycle we might call this, there's some things we can expect to see. One of them is a vast gap opening up between the haves and the have-nots, what we now call the 1% and maybe the lower classes financially speaking. That gap is always widening at the end of these long-term economic cycles, and it happens to be occurring right now as we speak. We see that in lots of ways. One way we see it is that the S&P, despite 20% plus unemployment, the stock market is grinding to new all-time highs. So those who own a lot of stocks, the financial class, are actually benefiting and are pretty happy with where their portfolios are. Conversely, those who really aren't participating very much in the financial world, the lower stakeholders, typically folks with less income and less invested in the stock market, are less interested in how the stock market's doing. In fact, they feel like they really don't have a voice at the table, and so they'd rather flip the table over. And we're seeing that happen. Now, because this is the result of a long-term human behavior cycle, or what we'll just call a long-term economic cycle, we can make some predictions about how things are changing and what we can expect in the future. One of the predictions we can make is the gap, as it widens, is going to make the social unrest worse. So what you're seeing happening with the George Floyd protests and previous protests is not going to get better. It's very likely to get worse because of the behavior cycle we find ourselves in. Now, there's another phenomenon that tends to happen in this behavior cycle, and that is that the institutions of a society tend to get challenged, and many of them, if not all of them, are eroded and destroyed. If you wonder if that's happening around you, I just want to ask you what you think or what you think others think about the institutions that are around us right now. Think of the institutions. How's Congress doing? How about the office of the presidency? What do you think people think about things like healthcare, which is an institution? What do people think about public schools? What do people think about the police department? I saw an article calling for the defunding of the police department just this morning. Now, this is the height of foolishness to consider defunding a police department, and yet I understand the mindset that it's coming from. Having spent a lot of my life in the third world, I can tell you, you don't want a non-functioning police department. It's not wise. It isn't good for anybody. But the fact that many in our society are calling for that is not that surprising given the situation we find ourselves in. So now, what do we do about it? How should we then live? Well, that's what I want to talk about with you. I want to have a dialogue with you over the coming days and weeks and months and however long this takes for us to work out together. But my goal, I want you to understand, is that we come out of it the other side in our small community as people who have a greater perspective and more tools for thinking about how institutions should be rebuilt and how citizens should live. There's a sense in which a civic duty belongs to each one of us as the institutions of our civilization are being challenged. It's a dangerous time. And it's more important than ever that we understand some things that have become more important than ever. And so those are the kinds of things I want to talk about with you. One of them, maybe the first and most important one I want to introduce you to, and I hope it's not a complete introduction, is the idea that there are things in human society that are absolutely true. Now, it seems strange to me that when I say there are some things that are true, that might be controversial, but it is controversial. There's lots of people who will say, no, there's no such thing as truth. There's only what's true for me or what's true for you. But we're starting to observe that that is not true. And in fact, there are absolute truths. There is a wisest, there is a best, there is a true. And to the extent that you push against that, you have the society we live in now. Let me give you an example. What if we say, you know, the way a person should treat another person is really not based in any absolute? I could give you some examples of that happening around us. Let's say, for instance, people don't ultimately deserve dignity. When we say something like people don't deserve dignity, there's an opposite corresponding truth, which is human beings deserve dignity. If that is true, we should be able to observe it in all kinds of different contexts and see that in each of those contexts it remains true. I'll give you an example. People who are detained by the police deserve dignity. They shouldn't have their hands handcuffed behind their back when they're really not rising to any significant kind of fight or resistance. They shouldn't be laid on their back, have two adults laid on their stomach with their hands cuffed. They shouldn't have a police officer put his knee in their neck and choke the life out of them. That shouldn't happen. It isn't dignified. And yet, because that's true, we also should not have people who then use that as an excuse to hijack an otherwise peaceful protest against that atrocity and go and commit atrocities of their own. I'm seeing in the news, as you are, innocent people being treated without dignity, their property destroyed, their lives threatened, in some of their cases, their lives lost, people beaten. Those will have long-standing ramifications into the future, all because of the idea that we've lost sight of human dignity. That is a truth. It's not the only truth, but what it does represent is that there is objective truth. Objective truth means whether you believe it or not doesn't matter. It's true not because you believe it, but because it is true. Now, Adam, why are you bothering with us with this? You're just some mortgage guy. Why are you talking to us about this? Here's why I'm talking to you about it. Because we, as a civilization, are going to have the responsibility to rebuild the institutions that we're tearing down around ourselves. When they were built the first time, they were built by people who had ideals. They understood some basic truths. And we don't agree on any ideals right now. And so I'm hoping that we can go back to a first principles, an approach that allows us to solve problems and to rebuild not only institutions, but to solve every problem we have by going back to first principles. So that first principle that I would give you is that there is a such thing as absolute right and wrong. Now you have to think about that. If truth exists, how does that affect the way you live your life? It means that there is a right and wrong. It means indeed that there is a best and a less good. It means that there are consequences for violations of truth, of principles that are true. I'll give you another example, which is just in the realm of physics. And that would simply be if you go up on the roof and you decide to jump off, you're going to fall. It doesn't really matter if you think you're going to fall, if you're pro-fall or anti-fall, if you're anti-gravity or pro-gravity. Gravity doesn't care which side you're on. Gravity is true. It's a law. There are lots of laws that govern us. Some of them are laws of physics, some laws of math. I love those laws. Some of them are laws of morality. Some of them are laws of humanity. And these are the kinds of things we have to explore and preserve together. So I want to encourage you as much as I can, as much as is appropriate for just another human, just a citizen, with you. I want to encourage you to step back from the trees and take a look at the forest. All the things that are happening around you are happening as a result of first stepping away as a society from the idea that there is absolute truth. If stepping away from absolute truth has brought us to this place, then it's a step toward absolute truth that helps us understand what institutions deserve to be in place, how those institutions should function, and ultimately, how human beings should treat one another. Obviously, there's more to say on this topic, and I want to say it, and I want to say it with you. I want to have a dialogue with you, so agree, disagree, push back, support us, troll us, as I've said, and let's keep moving forward together. But start with this first idea. There is a such thing as absolute truth. I look forward to talking to you more. I'm really grateful for this time with you, and I hope we can walk this journey together, figure this out, and arrive at some conclusions that will help us to think, observe, and live better. I think that's what we call wisdom. I hope to see you again soon. Take care. Bye.